Hello and welcome back here downstairs at the exhibition floor at ESOMAR TV. It's Tuesday, it's the second day of Congress, and we have a lot to come for you today. In the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to talk about wow, you do researchware. I don't know if you just switched from channel 1, you've been watching the session upstairs. I was in the room, these were some remarkable stories. As we speak, 4 of the speakers of that session are being rushed down and getting ready to join us here in these seats. But to fill that gap, we have some news to bring, because I'm joined by Finn Raben, the Director General of ESOMAR. And last night, you launched the Global Market Report for the market research industry.
Yes, that's right. It's our annual report on the size of the industry, which thankfully this year shows our market to be growing again. Maybe not in overall terms all around the world, but it shows that there's certainly positivity in the market, and that for many of the companies that are now involved in the analytics side of the business rather than the more traditional data collection, there's huge potential for growth. So it's a good sign, I think, for the industry in total. And it's now $43 billion minimum, and probably somewhere close to $70 billion. I mean, that's bigger than the online TV games.
You say
market.
Probably? That's a big uncertainty.
Well, the traditional market we measure very tightly.
Yeah.
But the extended market, which includes all the new analytics sectors, we don't have as good a mechanism for getting at. But we do have a number of sources, one in particular that we use in the US, which gives us that kind of information on an estimated basis. So that's why probably. So
right.
we think it's at least $65 billion. We think it's probably closer to 70.
All right. And you say there's a lot of growth opportunity in the analytics side of the market. We hear that a lot. We hear a lot of people in our studio saying, well, this market needs to change. It's moving from data collection to analytics. If people watching right now, what message do you have for them? What can they do to actually move further down that scale?
Yes.
Or
good,
up, I should say.
Well, great question.
Yeah.
I guess a little bit of history. Before, when people needed information, the only trade, the only profession that could provide that were market researchers. We were the gatekeepers, if you like, to that data. Nowadays, data is being produced by everybody, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's just simply through blogs. The advent of the internet, the advent of digitization has allowed people to contribute data without ever needing to be asked. And so the gatekeeper function becomes, if you like, less important, and the analytics and the synthesizing element becomes much more important. And that's why there are huge opportunities in that area. This is not to say that the traditional market is going to die. Of course not. There's always a need for really good, solid, traditional types of research. And the report actually also goes on to talk about work that they do in troubled areas. So if you have to do work in Liberia and you're looking at how you measure the incidence of Ebola, or if you want to do work in Syria about ISIS, they have to be very carefully constructed samples.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, the analytics side is where now the big growth opportunities exist.
And later today, in the lunch break, we're talking about the skill sets needed for that. Because do you feel that the companies and the human resources that are now present in the market research fields are fit for purpose? Can they actually make this step?
I think all the basic skills are there. After all, we as market researchers, we're still the people who can work with data best. We know what data is, how to use it. And you'll hear an awful lot about big data. I mean, does big necessarily mean good? I'm not so sure.
It means a lot, right?
It means a lot, right? But smart data is important. So we can have all the data we like in the world, but we don't have to use all of it to answer the questions. We need to know which bits of that data to use. So smart data and the ability to decide and to identify what's relevant to the business question, that's what market researchers do.
Yeah, and that just makes me think of another discussion I'll have later today in the studio, where we talk about with clients about the fact, and we heard it before here in the studio, that we're so data rich and insights poor. What is your take on that?
Well, I think, unfortunately, and I'm a researcher for all my life, but we are relatively conservative. So moving and the desire for change and the happiness about sitting in your comfort zone affects all industries and all professions. But I think from what we heard yesterday, that rate and pace of change is accelerating all the time. So we do have to switch the emphasis. We are data rich, but we're probably the only people that can leverage that data as well as anyone else. So huge opportunities, yes, huge opportunities for the future of market research as a career.
And can you perhaps show us some key indicators? What do I see either in my company or in the talks with my clients that I perhaps might not be grasping all the opportunities? What happens to me?
Well, I think speed is one of the most important things. Clients have a huge demand to get information into them and back out into the marketplace quickly. I think if that's not happening, then maybe there are alternative mechanisms and methodologies that you should use. The ability to generate insights from observation, the ability to look at previous data sets and see how they can be further leveraged within your company is also a huge source of material. And if you're not leveraging all of those, then perhaps it's time maybe to talk to another market research company, see what they can do with the information. And,
partnering up,
absolutely,
you say. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, there were two speeches yesterday from which the two nuggets that I picked. The first was Susan Hayes, the economist, who said, don't wait for the perfect moment. Make this moment the perfect one.
Yeah.
And there's no point in waiting for it to come to you. Go and grab it. The Nike, just do it.
Yeah.
And the second thing was the comment made by the guys from Unilever, where they said, the rate of change will never be as slow as it is today. It will keep accelerating.
Yeah, that's a scary quote if you listen to that carefully.
Yes,
yeah.
But you look at your mobile phone, and there's more computing power in your mobile phone than there was in the lunar landing capsule, however many years ago. So those kinds of things, if we're ready to embrace them and grasp them and move on, fantastic opportunities.
Exactly. And if our viewers really start to do that, then we will then see that in the Global Market Report of 2016, we hopefully see that in the numbers. Back to the Global Market Report, what is ESOMAR, what is that being used for? How can either our viewers or how are you using that data, that information, that insight to leverage?
Well, I think there are two main areas that the report is key. First is to identify those areas of growth, the markets of growth, and an awfully large number of the books are actually bought by investment houses and financial institutions to see where the markets are growing and with what methodologies. The other part is by many members of our own profession currently to see what are the because we also do a number of guest interviews, and they say, what are the hot points? What are the kind of things that are keeping people up at night to see, I guess, are there opportunities for them or are there areas of interest that they should be looking at more? It's you will say, well, I would say that, wouldn't I? But it is a great book because although we collect the numbers from a huge number of contributors around the world, and I owe them all a really, really big word of thanks because the report simply could not be built without them. The expert interviews, and we talk with the CEOs of some of the major multinationals and looking at the challenges of research. And as I said just a moment ago, we tend maybe to concentrate sometimes on fast-moving consumer goods, and we don't think about the work that's done in Afghanistan or Colombia.
Yeah.
So those kinds of perspectives in the book are they're just eye-opening. And when I read the book, I can tell you I'm proud to be a researcher.
Exactly. So it's not only about reporting on the current state of the industry, but it's also the second part is much more inspiration, right? That is something you want to read.
I hope so, and maybe even revelationary.
Exactly. Well, Finn, thank you very much. Let's do a quick look forward because later today you'll be back in the studio, especially in the lunch break show today.
That's right.
Where we're going to talk about switching roles.
Yes.
What is that all about?
Well, what I'd love to do is that you've been very good at kind of getting input from the various exhibitors, the various delegates, and we'd just like to switch it around. And we're going to post a question out on Twitter. We'd like to hear from you to say, what is it that you'd like to see us talking about in the next year? And I'll try and host some of it. I'm not going to be nearly as good as you are, Gert, so you've done a great, fantastic job. But I'll try, and guys, if you're out there and you've got thoughts, send them in to me.
So we're going to crowdsource the content agenda for 2016, right?
Yes.
Well, that's very exciting. Mark it in your calendar. I think by heart it's 3:30 Ireland time. So wherever you are in the world, make sure you're there.
I've tweeted it already, so guys, send your tweets back to me.
Exactly. Hashtag ESOMAR TV, and that's also there for all your questions, all your comments that you want to ask, either to Finn, we'll save them and pose them to you later today. And if you've been watching Channel 1, also for our viewers, for our presenters from Channel 1 that are coming up. And I'm going to thank you very much, Finn.
Thanks, Gert. It's been great fun.
I'm going to take your microphone back to another corner of this little studio where we have Marcel van Overveld. Marcel, good morning.
Good morning, Gerrit.
Good to have you here again. In a minute or so, the seats will be filled with 4 of our presenters from the Wow You Do Research Where session.
Totally, yeah.
That was a very interesting session, very compelling, very short stories. So I can imagine that if you've been watching that, you have some questions, either to Natalie or to Marita, to Alexander or to Fatima. How can these questions be entered into the studio?
Yes, well, as our online viewers, some probably a lot of them already know, but for the new viewers, welcome. Please use Twitter and tweet out with ESOMAR TV.
Hashtag ESOMAR TV.
Hashtag ESOMAR TV, that's correct. Or use the interactive panel below the player where you can send in questions or comments and chat so we can pick it up. I will view that, and if there's a nice and good or interesting question, I will be sure to feed it off to you.
Yeah, because that is something new on the ESOMAR real estate. I don't know if you've been watching before. In the other channels, you don't have such a thing. But on channel 3, if you scroll down, there's a box where it says Ask, Chat or Vote. And specifically that Ask tab is something we invite you to use right now.
Yeah,
so
totally.
that you can then post your questions. And if you don't have a question yourself, perhaps you see someone else pose a question that you like. And there's actually a like button.
Like it, definitely. And just to underline that it is working, Finn just tweeted out to send in some suggestions for the afternoon session, which Christopher Welter, as we perhaps can see on the
screen. Yeah,
on screen. Christopher reacted to that directly with a suggestion which we will address to Finn later on.
So it's working.
Yeah, definitely.
So we actually have viewers and they are responding. Totally. And that's good news. Thank you very much, Christoph. And if you're watching from elsewhere, maybe this is the time to also take a picture of where you're watching. We heard Natalie refer to it on stage. Her colleagues in Africa are watching. Well, we would be very curious to see what that looks like.
Send a picture, guys.
So send a little picture and you can either tweet it to us, hashtag ESOMARTV, or on the chat tab, you can just upload it in the chat, and we will be then perhaps able to show some of that back to you in the broadcast.
Totally. Go interactive, guys. Go interactive.
Thank you very much. And with that, I see my panel has found their way to the seats. So let's move back. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Well, we're not sure. Some of our viewers have been watching you on stage. They already know who you are. Some of our viewers might have been watching channel 2, so they literally have no clue what you were talking about. We have on your right, it would be, on your right, on my far left, Natalie Forcher. You shared a story about how you do research in South Sudan, which in the program everywhere is referred to as a war zone. And I saw the email where you said, can we stop calling it that? Because there's actually a recent peace treaty there, right?
Yes. There just has been a peace treaty signed in South Sudan. And, you know, a lot of the places where we work, we call them challenging environments. Definitely some conflict going on, but war zone tends to make it sound like it's a horrible place, and for us it's a place of inspiration.
All right, well, I'm glad we were able to set that straight. Next to you is Marita Schimpel. We saw you on stage talking about how you are opening up research in Myanmar, in a company that is just opening up itself, and you're making very broad and bold, brave steps there, I think. Thank you very much. And on my right, your left, we have Fatima El-Khatib. You talked about the challenges of doing research in Saudi Arabia. I think that was rather humorous, right, with the picture of the covered ladies. And on my far right, your left, we have someone I wasn't expecting. I was actually expecting Alexander. Okay, thank you very much. But luckily I was in the room. So I was expecting Alexander talking about doing research on gangs. But you have to help me with your name, though.
I'm Ibrahim.
Ibrahim, that was it. Yes. And you talked about how you do research in Iran, right? Yes. And how the Iranian respondents are actually quite atypical. For our viewers who haven't seen that, can you explain a little bit about the story you shared?
Oh, definitely. The first time I did research in Iran, I was getting contact rates around like 80%, response rates of around 86%. Yeah. And you know, that was quite surprising to me. But when I started listening to these interviews, I realized that people are actually eager to speak to someone about their opinions. And not only they share their opinions, they provide reasoning behind their opinions. They engage in a deliberative kind of a mode to in fact form opinions. So when on an issue they don't have a formed opinion, what they do, they engage the interviewer in a deliberation as a way of forming an opinion.
Their opinion.
Yep.
And I think that touches on the topic of cultural differences.
Exactly.
And that was an element in the stories of all four. And I'd like to open up the floor talking about, I can imagine it's very struggling that if you're dealing with global brands and global brand managers who maybe are US headquartered and are very far developed in this market research field, and then you have to kind of talk them into the wooden house. I mean, can you share a little bit with us? How does that work? How you bring them down from global to local understanding and understand how you have to work with your environment?
I think it already helps if they would come out, and then in the proposals you put in many photos and you just explain to them, you know, that it's a different market. And I have to say, I think most clients will understand. It's a bit of a hard work in the beginning, right. Because I think we are in a very fast-paced mindset. You know, we want to send out, you know, the request for proposal quick. We want to have the answer quick.
Budgets under pressure. We have to be efficient.
And so, you know, you have to bring the client into a different sort of mode, you know.
You're nodding, Natalie?
No, absolutely. I mean, having the client come out is the best way to address this issue. But a lot of times there's just a lot of conversations about how things are different. And one of the big challenges we face is we're doing research in places where some of our clients don't even know it's a country. I mean, South Sudan gained its independence in 2011. We get RFQs all the time for Sudan. We have to politely write back and say, well, excuse me, we're actually a separate country. They're like, oh, fantastic. Could you do that as well? So, you know, there's a certain amount of educating the client that we work in.
Yeah, please add.
Actually, for the Middle East, I mean, I spoke particularly about Saudi, but if you take a close look at the Middle East, I mean, there is a lot of particularity for every country, which makes it even more difficult because sometimes you're doing a study in, let's say, Lebanon, Egypt, and Saudi, and these three countries are extremely different in their attitude and the way people react, and even the setup of the field, etc. So a lot of pictures, and I have to say, some of the clients, or let's say largely, the clients rely on your local expertise. They call you because you know and you live there and you've been really close to the field, so they rely on your expertise and they trust you on that. But you have to do all of this in a very fast manner and a very cost-effective manner. So that's the challenge.
So bringing out the client, is that a practice you can apply, or is that a wish?
Not always.
No?
No.
Sometimes.
I think for qualitative research, of course, I think many times they will come out actually.
All right.
And also I think these days many of the big global companies who come to a market like Myanmar, they don't come from the States. They have their original headquarters in Bangkok or in Singapore or in Hong Kong. So for them it's easier.
The cultural gap is not as large as we can imagine.
Yeah. I mean, in my case, it's a wish. I mean, I wish my clients could come to Iran. They usually rely on me to provide them with the local knowledge. But the way I get around the issue you made is that I tell them how richer of a data I'm providing them. I'm not only providing them with the response option that people have given, but the reasoning people are providing for those response options and how the respondents think the questionnaire could be made better.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't beat that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to apply pressure, but I'll go ahead and say it. The good clients come.
Yeah,
the really good clients come out.
Let's apply some pressure. I mean, that's the whole reason why this session is in this conference. That's the whole reason we bring you out into the studio, to actually show the world that doing research in different places is not a one-size-fits-all thing,
actually,
right?
Yeah, the one-size-fits-all thing, because most of the studies that are cascaded to our regions are usually globally led. So there is a lot of like stereotype, not stereotype, but there is a lot of templates that we need to follow usually. And I can safely say 30 to 40% of these templates are not viable in our regions.
Correct.
And so a good client who's actually willing to adapt to the local specificities, specialties or specifics is very helpful. Definitely.
I'm sorry, Fatima, are you saying that the Middle East isn't one country?
Definitely not.
Because we too have to deal with the country
Abu Dhabi
of Africa
and Dubai. And I got a question like, what's the currency in Abu Dhabi? I'm like, Abu Dhabi and Dubai are in the same country, and it's the United Arab Emirates. And then, like, and how is this different from Bahrain? I'm like, this is a totally different country.
Yeah. So there's a lot of uncertainty and knowledge. However, if we say we have to change to the local situation, this is a global study. How are we going to aggregate the data, right? That's the next question.
That's basically the problem. A lot of times we tell our clients that, look, if you ask this question in this way, you're not going to get the responses that are going to be useful. The responses you're going to get is that people are actually mean this. They don't mean what you want them to, what you're getting out of this question. And there has been instances where the client was dead hard that this is the instrument I'm going to use, no other instrument.
Because I want to be able to compare across the world.
And there has been instances where the whole research was unviable because of the structure and some of the response options. That was part of the survey instrument. So I think it is very important if there's a message you could get out to clients.
Yeah, please do, because we have a global audience.
Yeah, it is very important to take full benefit of your field agents who have local knowledge. You know, from US, thinking about how a survey instrument should look like in Iran, you know, things could go really wrong, really badly.
But still,
Sorry, I think the idea is not to change the question and the questionnaire or to change the areas of information that you need to gather. The point is to just adapt the language and adapt the way you actually ask the question. Eventually, the key indicator, the key performance, the KPI remains the same.
Can still be the same.
Yeah, it remains the same. It still could be benchmarked to a certain extent, but it's just the way you ask it and the different options that you put out there. You know, I mean, you can't come in and do a study about beverages in Dubai and say, would you have a beer on a terrace? You don't have beers on terraces in Dubai. There are no terraces in Dubai to stay. It's too hot to sit outside, and beers is not served this way. So this is what he means, I believe. If I understand
that's a very obvious one. By the way, if you just joined us, if you have a question for any of our panelists, please make sure you break in either to hashtag ESOMAR TV or to the interactive question panel that's on the bottom of your screen. Moving into a next area that all four of you shared is the enormous amount of creativity that you need to actually overcome some of these barriers that you're being on fun. I mean, your story about how you all of a sudden invented WhatsApp as a research means.
Yeah, actually the respondents do get creative with you, you know. I mean, at some point, I mean, in our part of the world, people are very warm and they're very social and they connect with you on a personal level. After a focus group, there's at least a 60-70% chance that people share their numbers with me and they will become my friends. Exactly, they become my friends and they want to like hang out, etc. So people bond a lot. So they tend to co-create solutions with you. So they know that you're trying to do your job. Once they get that, and you're a woman trying to connect with women, they help you out. So they were the ones suggesting WhatsApp. They were the ones suggesting home visits. So actually, they co-create it with you.
Wow. How's that in your end of the world?
I mean, for us, creativity is the key to what we do. And that's really where we look to the creativity of our staff. We try and ensure that they're solution-oriented. And one of the things that comes to mind recently on a project, one of our fantastic staff, who's actually hopefully watching from Cairo, Oriana was sending a team out into the field, again, where they were going to be out in the middle of nowhere for nearly a month with potentially no access to electricity. We needed to be able to see the data before they returned back to the capital. And so Oriana rushes into my office and she says, Natalie, listen, I need your credit card. Right. I'm buying solar panels. I'm having them DHL'd from the UK. They should be able to arrive here in time. I have the charter plane standing by. We're going to have the solar panels that are going to plug into the netbooks. The netbooks are then going to be on the Zane sticks. And I'm looking at her and I'm going, here is my credit card. You seem to have this all sorted out. And she had. I mean, she had really, all of our staff, they use these amazing creative solutions to get around those challenges that, as I said in my presentation, when you first arrived in South Sudan, they just said, high quality research isn't possible. And we've been able to find those people who say, no, it is. It is. We just need to figure out a way.
Yeah. I mean, another way, we don't face those same kind of infrastructural challenges in Iran.
The base level.
The base level is there. The challenge we are facing is not a challenge. It's actually, if you look at it in a different way, it's an opportunity. It was being perceived as a challenge by previous researchers because they wanted to adapt to these international standards of doing a survey in a structured way and whatnot. I think our job is not to impose structure on people, but to accept the structure in the societies and adapt ourselves to that structure. And once you do that, you see there's a lot more opportunity than a challenge. So it's a different perspective that you have to take. Once you take a different perspective, I think you will see more opportunities than challenges.
I totally agree, because I think if we judge with our eyes, I think we won't go far. And I have actually come across a brochure of our company which is like 10 years old, and they are describing how they do the field work. So on foot, with the ox cart, with the boat, and I thought it's awesome, you know. And maybe, you know, it is a normal way to do, you know, research in rural Myanmar at that time, you know. Is it a challenge? Yes, of course. It's not as fast, you know, as in our countries.
Compared to the modern day.
Yes, it's always a matter of comparison, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, and I think it allows you, if I listen to your stories, it allows you being stripped or deprived. We talked about deprivation methodologies yesterday in the studio. Being stripped from all that luxury, so to speak, infrastructure-wise, really brings you back to the core of the research profession, right?
Absolutely. It actually puts you straight, you know, and you start thinking about the priorities and all of those quality standards that you have to maintain, and you let go of anything that is extra. So, for example, if you don't have a one-way mirror, use a CCTV. You don't have a CCTV, put a chair, you know, open the door, put a chair, let people listen in. I mean, they will still listen in, they will still get the feedback, but it doesn't have to be high-tech. So, yeah, you have to get creative. If the room is not neutral enough, I don't know, put something to make it more white, let's say more white on the walls. I mean, we did that. We did that in Algeria. I remember we cleaned rooms, we covered the walls of rooms. I mean, just because this is what you got and you're in the remote area and you really need to do stuff as much as possible according to the protocol.
So if we explore that a bit, we have an audience question. Yes, Marcel, please break in.
Well, Gerrit, it's not so much a question as I would like to share the love that we received from South Sudan, from Eric Whittaker to Natalie. And it's probably on screen, and they are saying they're watching it from South Sudan and that they are so proud of you, Natalie. So I just wanted to share that and share the love that is
and we want to celebrate that, right? If you're watching, this is what it's like, right? If you're watching, you have access to a mobile phone, which they even do in deep down Africa, right? So you can use either Twitter or our chat box below. Send us your pictures, send us your comments, send them your love if you want to, and please make sure you take full opportunity of the situation that we're offering right now. We started to talk a little bit about priorities, and I'd like to elaborate on that a little bit more, especially for our viewers watching in a very luxurious space with all the infrastructures, with high-speed internet, with large databases. What could you teach them, or what could you share with them about the core priorities? Or let's take it personal. What have you learned about the core priorities of the research field?
I think you need to understand the objective of the client and how we get there. Okay, it's a different question, but I think the client can't expect that we exactly follow the same path. We will totally, you know, fulfill and deliver on the objective, but how to get there may be a bit different. And I think that's I think the
And what have you changed in the way you operate or in the way you relate to your clients to actually make sure that that happens?
Well, it starts with timings. Especially in the rainy season, you know, we can't be as fast when we have to do a nationwide survey because many areas can be flooded. So that is something where you have to talk with the client about, you know, getting maybe a bit more timing, more time to run the survey. But also, you know, giving the client, I think it's a matter of trust. Because what I have experienced is, especially in the first years, is that most people treated us like, you know, we are stupid, you know, that we have no clue at all.
On the client side?
Well, but also client, also other agencies, whoever, you know, but because I thought, oh, this country is now opening up, and there are people, you know, those people that have no clue at all. No, that's not true. You know, as I said, you know, there was an industry on the ground for already 20 years. Of course, it was not, you know, like the same type of market research which is required now, but there was a lot of expertise, and there is a lot of expertise. So I think it's a matter of, you know, people wanted to control every single step, because they thought we hadn't got the expertise in doing, you know, simple field work, you know, which actually, you know, made our job even more complicated. You know, sending out, you know, protocols and whatever, you know, fieldwork updates every day, you know.
Kind of to manage the client side and keep them at ease.
Yeah. But I think by now, I think people have trust. At least, you know, people who are working with us, and there are also many more other agencies now. So I hope clients can relax and have trust in what we are doing, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, just to add on to that, this perception that because we're in these countries, we're working in these environments, that there's no base level of skills there. I can't reiterate enough how much that is not the case.
Yes.
Of all the places I've worked in the world, and all the places that we work now, South Sudan, Somalia, and Congo, the individuals we've been able to find to work with our company have been absolutely inspirational and amazing. There's a lot of skills here.
Yes.
There may not be a lot of formal education. We do not have a graduate studies of master research program at the University of Juba. But what I will tell you is that if you take the time to invest, you're going to get high quality research. You have to build that trust in your clients and say, yes, you know, we have national researchers that are going to go out and conduct this research. They're not specialists in fast-moving consumer goods, and they're not specialists in your particular product. What they are specialists in is the country and the environment where we're working, and you have to trust us.
It's actually more relevant, and actually the importance of being local is higher than being an MBA grad, I would say.
Absolutely, and again, not to put the pressure on the clients, but I think we need to shift a little bit of the priority here. We have to say, look, local knowledge is what is the most valuable. We can help you do your jobs. We can help you sell your products and change your policies, but you have to trust us. We know where we are.
Because this seems to be a broader theme, not only in the remote countries, but I've heard it before in the studio, like the metaphor of going to the garage and to get your car fixed. And not dropping off your car, but then telling the mechanic, you need to use that screwdriver, you need to put it on that. That is what this industry is facing, right? The clients come too much into your profession. Now you can say they have to trust us, but how can we, how are you doing that?
Now, I can't emphasize more than on the fact that the objective of the client is very important. So the client has to be very clear about what they are trying to achieve. Now, in terms of when it comes to micromanagement, they have to realize that that level of micromanagement in some instances could in fact wreck the...
It's going to
damage the issue. So if we want to use the metaphor, the analogy of a garage, yes, bring in the car, tell us what is wrong with the car. We will show you how you're fixing it. Now, we never tell our clients, just trust us, you know. No. Give us your objective, and we will deliver the data, and then, no, we walk them through step by step. We tell them, okay, if you're doing this for this reason, we attain their authorization, we go to the next step, and then we go to the next step. Step by step, we walk them through the process, and it becomes an educational process for them as well. Next time around, the trust has already been developed, so they come with the objective and say, I'm sure you know how you're doing, do what you're best at. And that's how we take care of the issue.
And how can I envision this? Is this a very formal thing? I mean, is this all about writing on paper?
We do it quite formally, actually. You know, when they give us their objective, when we develop the questionnaire, we get their signatures on the questionnaire. When they, you know, approve of the questionnaire, when we want to, you know, tell them about our methodology, we write it down, we get their approval on that. Now, convincing them that this is the right methodology, that's informal. We don't write pages of, you know, of reasoning behind it. But we tell them this is exactly what we want to do, because we want to be totally transparent with the client. We don't want, because on one hand, we have to attain the trust of the respondents. On the other hand, we have to also attain the trust of the client. So if you're that person in between,
very balancing position.
And this balancing it's both an art and it's a science of it as well. And this is what we do at iranpoll.com. This is precisely, these are the process, and we tell our clients from early on that this is the process we're going to walk you through. Bear with us, at least the first time. Next time you'll take less time.
I think part of it is, though, too, you have to recruit good talent. You have to bring great people into your organization who really know what they're doing. Now, we all know that the Netherlands is highly regarded for its market research industry. We've heard everyone talk about it. And I'm proud to say that one of the greatest Dutch methodologists is in our firm down in South Sudan right now, right? And part of that is you have to recruit very talented and unique individuals who have the same passion for excellence in research that you do, and, you know, have them help you in these countries where you're working. And they're there. There are people that are willing to come. And I hope that some of the people here at Congress, as we talked about, will consider coming and building capacity in the countries where we work and help some of the more emerging markets as we improve our market research methodology.
Because that's a big shout out that both of you made on stage, right? I mean, we need to have a flow of intelligence and brain power into these areas.
I think what Natalie said, I think the enthusiasm and the creativity is there. And I'm so proud of the team I'm working with. They're really excellent, bright people. But of course, what is not there is because of the lack of, the opportunity to have that education, is many things like, okay, let's say, what is a concept? What are the KPIs of a concept? But I think if you finish school or university in the Western world, maybe, well, if you have studied marketing, maybe you know, but you also have to learn. But I think also from the clients, I think clients should, I would ask clients also to be patient. So what I experience is, I think, let's say the first half year, people were saying, yeah, okay, it's Myanmar. We know, you just opened up, But the patience has gone. But as I said, you can't build the whole industry on the level we are right now within even 3 years. It's not possible, it's not possible.
Yeah.
And people are bright, people are great, but like we all of us, I'm in the industry since over 20 years. I haven't been, brilliant from day one, probably.
Exactly.
Nobody has.
You need to have the room to grow.
Yes. Yes.
Hey, another theme I would like to explore with you guys, especially from the very different regions in the world that you come from, and it's a big theme also in this studio, is not only about collecting and localization, but now we have to communicate our insights, right? And we see creative workshops. It's about, we talked a little bit about how do you take your clients along. We can produce data sheets, we can produce written signatures.
Actually, I have to say that personification and its bigger definition works very well. I mean, most of the prejudice, let's say, that they have about certain consumers is just like a normal normal expectations about consumers, which is highly driven by the Western world. This is what people come into our countries with.
The typical stereotype.
Exactly. I have to say, taking a lot of pictures, taking them along to visit homes, bringing in consumers. At some point in time, I brought in consumers to the presentation, and I actually made them kind of like confess the truth in front of them, just to show them that at some point in time you might be dealing with a totally different culture. But I have to say, we're not living in isolation anymore. The media is really exposing a lot, okay? So people do have an idea that you're dealing with a different culture. The only thing is they're not sure how different, and they're not sure in what way. So they're expecting something different, but they're not. Sometimes they get a bit shocked when they know the truth about certain habits and attitudes. But yeah, I mean, for example, in Haystack, we do something called Shopper Safari, or we do, let's say, Consumer Connect, which is basically meaning taking the client's team, marketing, sales, R&D, etc., and putting them into consumers' houses or with shoppers on the floor, and making them roam around and spend enough time with them so that they can, let's say, accustom themselves even with the language and the way they talk, and then it becomes easier after that.
Yeah.
It becomes
so
easier.
So
Context,
that's actually
basically.
a big investment even after the research.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Context creation in our case is very important. A lot of clients come in with objectives of like, I want to test this concept, okay? To me, it's never like that. It's like you have to start from a little bit behind to understand where do these people come from, what do they use, how do they use it, and then test your concept. Because in isolation, the concept means absolutely nothing, and it's probably going to be far off on your expectations of how it will do if you don't know the context behind it. So definitely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So similar things, yeah?
Yeah, three of my colleagues down in South Sudan, Haley, Dang, and Steven, are working on a huge project that's creating an audience rating center for South Sudan. Huge challenges. And last year we went ahead and we piloted a diary system in South Sudan. And it had very interesting findings. My personal favorite being when, after we distributed the diaries, we trained the respondents on how to fill them in. We went back to collect them, and, well, we were told very frankly, my goat ate my diary. So
your goat eats your diary.
Yeah, of course.
That's what you have
goats
to
eat
deal
anything,
with.
and you can't leave your diary laying around. So that was the first sign that we might have to look for a more innovative approach to audience ratings in South Sudan. But we brought together some of the best minds on the matter, and we're really, like you said, it's about introducing new ways for people to share information.
Absolutely.
People want to tell you these things. Right. It's not that it's a secret. It's not that there isn't an inherent trust actually in the research process. But you have to find a way that really speaks to the respondent. so that they feel comfortable sharing that information.
One thing, speaking of like the goat ate my diary, I mean, it was somewhere in the middle of nowhere in Egypt, and we were doing detergent study, and actually what happened is that the woman, we left some piece of cloth, and the detergent, assuming that the woman will use the clothes, will wash it, and will come back and take it back from her. And what actually ended up happening is that she kind of gave a bath to the kids using the detergents, because, and it was actually, I thought that we were not considerate enough doing this type of research, going into a home where absolutely there is no flooring, there is no furniture, there's only one big TV, huge actually, and there are some cows roaming around in the background, and assuming that she's going to actually cooperate. I mean, we have to feed her first, we have to give her a little bit of money to actually get the basics done in her household before asking her to participate in such a study, or change the methodology altogether. I mean, we did care about the kids because it's poisonous to kind of like, so we did like get scared, but eventually nothing happened. But this is when we were saying, okay, this methodology doesn't work. It's either that we give her more or we change the approach. So.
I mean, when it comes to communicating with the clients about the final results and delivering the insight. Now, you have one instance where the client is totally clueless. I find those instances to be actually good instances because, you know, they're clueless, you have a clean field. Now, when it comes to Iran, they already have all these misconceptions, I would say, and they already have decided what the majority of Iranians are going to say and how they're going to feel. And every result that you give them, it's a surprise to them. And you know, the first one is a surprise, the second one, the third one, and once you get to the end, they're like, really? Is this what it is? Is this what you're getting? And that's when the local knowledge becomes really important for you to explain why it is rational for them to pick response option B in that context. You have to basically destroy all of their preconceptions and build it up, ground up again. And then it is, once you do that, they say, wow, they feel as if they have learned something new. And now they know how they can either sell their products, pursue a certain policy in Iran that actually going to achieve their objectives.
So how, if I may, how are you doing this? Because this is the process that needs to happen.
Right.
We're not conveying data, we're changing perception. Right. But how are you actually making this happen? You told about the shopper safari, about bringing respondents along to your presentation. Yeah. Can you share some examples of that?
So one of the ways that we do it, we always insist on having a face-to-face presentation of the data with the client. We always insist on that. A lot of times clients say, send us the report,
we'll
send the data, we'll do it ourselves. We insist that and sometimes we do it, with little or no cost to the client, because we know that this data needs us as an attachment to it. Without it, the client is going to look at it and it's just going to be a stunt. We have to tell them about why it is that we have to provide the reasoning, the background that is required to understand the data. Our experience has been that when clients just tell us, send us data, we have our own analysts, they come back to us. They say, can you explain why?
Yeah, exactly. Then you end up with that anyway.
And then you end up with that anyway. And we always we look at that as an opportunity, both to build the trust with the client and to make the data more applicable and more relevant to the objective that they're pursuing.
Exactly.
I can only also stress what you said. It's about the context. So what we try to do is for each study to have a chapter about the context, because the context matters big time.
But that is still a written chapter. That's something in the report.
No, it's or photos.
Okay.
Very highly visual. I think you need to work with lots of photos and really to come across what does it actually look and feel to be in that context, and what is actually the consequence for your product or for your brand. I think that's very important to understand, because the context from the surface it may look similar, but if you dig deeper, you will find out it's actually not similar.
Very different. Yeah.
For us, that's why we decided to strategically ensure that we're able to invest in high-quality researchers from those areas, right? Even within our countries, I mean, beyond the country that is Africa, within each of those countries, you're looking at very diverse cultures, very diverse practices within those countries.
But you're saying you use that to communicate the results as well.
Absolutely, because when our clients are able to speak with individuals who can say, look, this is my area of this country, and this is how I interpret the data that I collected, that I was a part of this focus group discussion, and I would make the same decisions. Now, I'm sure that you yourself and your staff know very well why it is that in rural Egypt you would have a big screen TV and no floor. We know the answer to that question. I'm not going to tell you, you have to hire a haystack to find out. But we know, that's very obvious to us. And yes. And so having an individual from that area explain it to your client is the most authoritative source, as it should be.
Yep.
That's actually, it feeds directly into the definition of the social economic class, because for somebody like Samsung, for example, a company like Samsung, this is quite a good cost consumer. But for somebody like, I don't know, food and beverages, even food and beverages, I mean, they fall into the bottom of the pyramid. So local expertise is extremely important, and not only local in context, I have to be an Arab because Arab is a region, but it's more in the context of Saudi people, having people from the Saudi background, lived in Saudi, or who are Saudi by nationality, Lebanese by nationality, Egyptian by nationality, Algerian by nationality, having all of those local, like really teeny tiny expertise. The areas that we deal with are very rich, really rich, and they're not homogeneous. They have a lot of particularities across the different regions and the different cities, etc. So the more you can hire people who are more local, the better you can offer your clients, definitely.
All right. Well, very nice. And with that, as you can hear, a lot of noise is starting up, so we're moving into the next tracks. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for participating. I invite you all to be back in the studio during the lunch break, where we talk about first the client side of research. After that, we're going to watch the award for the best exhibitor and the best young researcher. By the way, if you're interested in the best young researcher, you should switch to channel 2, where you will see the young researchers present in room 2. If you're more interested into the world of the shopper nowadays, then you should switch to channel 1. And for those of you still watching, perhaps Marcel can put on a little poll so we can actually see where you're going. Channel 1, channel 2, or perhaps you're just waiting for channel 3 to come back on. Thank you very much. We love to see your tweets and comments on #ESOMAR TV, and see you back in the lunch break.